So it's about to start. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks, Boo, for joining us. Dear all, I'm very happy to introduce Mr. Boo Tirumalai, a dear friend. But I would rather tell him as one of the best serial entrepreneurs I have known, serial entrepreneurs and angel investors who's attempted almost every type of business venture that you can think of. So one of the biggest testament is he runs a large or a mid-sized software services company called Aspire Systems, which has been ranked one of the top companies to work for in the last few years. Seriously, I mean serially, many times, just like how IIT Madras has been ranking in the NIRF. And the good thing or the interesting thing about that particular company is Boo is not a programmer or a coder. So he has created a very valuable software company without knowing how to code. So it goes to tell you about how important it is to find a right set of team members and how do you nurture and grow them so that together you can really add value. And currently, Boo he runs this energy services company called as Aspiration Energy, which we are recently venturing into manufacturing as well. So I would like Boo to share his wisdom on how he manages to identify and work with the right set of people to create value for everyone. Boo?
Hi, good evening, everyone. And thank you very much for inviting me for the Nirman team. And I'll be happy to share my experiences. What I will do is I'm going to be talking about four things. One is what I call as BTY, and I'll explain that. Two is about PCM, and I'll talk about that. And number three is XYZ. So these are the three frameworks that I'll talk about. But before I get into these three frameworks, BTY, PCM, and XYZ. Before I talk about these three frameworks, I will, the fourth topic is the first one. I'll share a little bit of experience on what teams I have tried to build and some of the failure stories, because success stories do not have too much to learn from, and failure stories have a lot to learn from, and success stories are stepping stones for the failure stories are the success stones for the success stories. And so I will share a little bit of my experience to start with. That will be the first one. Then we'll get into BTY. Then we will get into the PCM story. And then last, we will go into the XYZ story. And then after that, I'll be open to take questions. So from a experience standpoint, started off building a co-founder when I was in the second year of college, who is a co-founder for me even today. That sounds historic, archaic. Started in '87, so it's about 33 years now since my partner and I have been 33, right? So since my partner and I have been together, so we found each other in our class, in our engineering class, and uh, and I'll tell you where we moved from there. Although we two stayed together for the entire 32 years, even now we stay together. Now we have called our partnership as GB International, which is Gauri Bhu International, GBIL. Today, we have changed, transformed from what we call as GBIL 1.0, where we built some companies. Then we changed it to GBIL 2.0, where we created some companies, but we were not 100% or 50-50 in every company that we create. And now we are moving on to GBIL 3.0, where we are looking at what happens to GBIL after we retire or we pass away or whatever. So how do we build this beyond us is where we are going. So this is GBAL 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. Now, how we got to each other is, I think, is a question of sheer luck that we found each other, or I always say it's bad luck for him and good luck for me. And uh, so, can we organically find a co-founder who is staying with you for 32 years? Is a next question that I am questioning myself, is that only pure luck, or have I found people like that later in the other companies that I founded? And have I seen stories of people building such co-founders in their teams and how they find it and all of that? Obviously, a co-founding team has two or three fundamentals, in my opinion. Number one is, and I'll come to the PCM framework and XYZ framework later, but the first thing is there should be a mutual complementing skill sets that should exist. If the co-founding team is similar or aligned together too much, the skill sets are also same, and the kind of thought processes are the same, and they have a similar direction in life, then what happens is, why do I part? Let's say I'm parting 50% of what I'm doing, and he is bringing the same thing. I would also think the same way. Now, quantum issue. When I come to XYZ, we'll talk about the quantum and compensation and stuff like that. Is it only quantum? So we have the same kind of effort needed, but two people are going to do 2x work, so we share. Is that what is the partnership about? Is that what co-foundership is about? Actually not. The X plus Y should produce, and it's not the XYZ framework, but I'm just taking some numbers. 1 plus 1, if that is going to take 2x, 1 plus 1 is going to add up to 2, then that's not a great co-founding team at all. Because you have to take 1 plus 1 and produce 10 or 100 or 1,000, and that's when a great co-founding partnership comes. And so some lacuna that we have should be complemented by not only co-founder, any team member, unless we know exactly what needs to be done and you're just replicating it and you're just adding capacity. When you're trying to add capacity, or when you're trying to increase the quantum and not qualitatively increasing a team, then it's not a co-founder in a truest sense. So I don't know what Gauri found in me, but I will tell you what I found in him. I am a big problem with respect to keeping things organized. What that means is execution. I will come up with some 100 ideas and I will start on them. I'll be happy to start on them, and I am very good at playing with toys. A new toy. You give a new toy to a kid, the kid enjoys it for a few minutes, and after that the kid throws away, and the kid does not care about it. See, that's how I am. And so execution, ideas versus execution. In execution, it needs a little bit of organization. It needs completion. Now, the curiosity is there only when you're figuring out all the hard parts. But it is the very easy parts. I keep on quoting about an example about drama. I'm part of a drama group and I act in stage shows in Tamil. And the director writes the script, and the director is willing to direct the script, and the director is willing to stage the script. It looks like a sexy job, but if there is a rehearsal, there needs to be 10 or 12 rehearsals. It's a very boring job. Same dialogue, you have to repeat it 30 times, 40 times, and there will be one person in the team who's not up to speed, so you have to bring that person up to speed. That person would come to the rehearsal unprepared. You have to bring them up to speed. But more than that, scheduling. These are all amateur people, right? They have full-time professions. You have to pull them all together into a rehearsal. We schedule a rehearsal at 10 o'clock. Somebody will say, no, Sunday 10 o'clock, I have an important meeting. So to pull together a 10 or 12 people team into a rehearsal, even on a Sunday or a Saturday, is such a huge logistics nightmare. Now, this is the unsexy part of this job. And even after you schedule at 10 o'clock, all the 11 people or 12 people have said that they will come together at 10 o'clock. They will not come at 10 o'clock. They will call and say, I'm going to be delayed by 15 minutes. And is it at, we would have announced the venue, but there may be two venues. This person will say, oh my God, I thought it is at Watson's house. I didn't know that it was at Boo's house. The venue will not be known. They will not come in advance. They will come 15 minutes late, 20 minutes late. That is not story, screenplay, or direction. This is logistics and execution. That is the tough part. That is the part that requires organized thoughts. Now, Gauri has always been great at very, or not that he's not good at strategy, but I'm just saying from a predominant strength perspective, it is the execution. So we somehow found some amount of complementing. I still do not figure out what he has found in me. Because he's great at strategy as well, he's great at ideas as well, he's great at execution as well. But when I come to BTY framework, I'll mention about what that is. But then, so the fundamental is there needs to be a complementary, synergistic skill sets. Just quantum increase is not why you want to find a co-founder or any team member for that matter, unless you have a proven thing. Quantity is not enough, you are scaling. But till in a startup kind of environment, the work is not figured out, so you need to have complementary skill sets. Going back to my story, we had a circulation library. We used to circulate magazines home after home. We found it to be slightly uninteresting for us over a couple of months. So we thought we can hire our first team member. When we were 18 or 19, we hired our first employee. We gave the circulation, meaning we have to distribute magazines at homes and redistribute them. That's what circulation library means. I will not get into the details of it. And we found our first employee. We had about 135 members. We were floating in money. We were doing extremely well. People were very happy about our service. We hired our first employee. The work is well defined, right? Nothing big. You buy the magazines, give it to that person. The person takes 40 magazines, takes to the first house, collects yesterday's magazine back, gives the new magazines, and takes the preference of what needs to be given. So before that, we will give a route, which house has to be given which magazine. Very simple job. We thought we have set a process, we have written records, everything. 138 members, if I remember right, reduced to 37 members within 3 months. This is what happened. First ever failure of building a team was there. What did we learn? We learned that we first of all thought that, building a team is impossible. We should be doing it ourselves. That was the once bitten, twice shy of an immediate reaction. But because of that small business, we were leaving and all of that. We were in the final year by the time this happened. So we had to, Gauri had to go for his PG. I was going and joining a job. I will tell you another example of where we failed. When we started Aspire Systems, what we did was we said, no, we should not be once bitten, twice shy and all. We should build a great team. We said, okay, GB International, Gauri and Bhu, we will be 40% have the company, 20% each because we are the founders. But we found 6 other people and all the 6 of them will get 10% each. And we brought very different skill sets. One was a US citizen with finance background. One was a programmer. Neither of us were programmers. One was an architect. One was an HR person and all of that. So this was the 6 people plus 2 people team. 60%, 10% each was 6 people. For 2 of us, 40%, 20% each. We worked out these numbers extremely well. Now what happened? I quit my job. I already had quit my job. Gauri quit his job. Both of us were full-time on it. The other people did not want to quit their cushy jobs. One was working in Intel. One was running an air conditioning business in Bolivia. One was working for Citibank. They did not want to leave their cushy jobs and come. And only 4 of them contributed $5,000. That's all there is to it at that point in time. We contributed in proportion, right? We contributed $10,000 each. So we contributed $20,000. So only out of the 6 of them, only 3 of them contributed their $5,000. So contribution of cash was there, but that was not enough. And we were working full time. So it took us some 6-7 years to come out of it. One of the persons came and joined, quit his job, came and joined, one of the 6 people. That person, within 3 months, chickened out because revenue was not there. There was a lot of work and it was uncertain what to do with the future. He was already married. His wife was carrying. He could not sustain the risk. So within 3 months, he ran away. He disappeared. Close friend of mine. Now After we became successful, so this happened in 94 and 2004, 10 years later, he came and joined as an employee. He was a co-founder in 94. This very person joined as an employee for our own company. And even now he is an employee. From 2004, 16 years he has been with us now as an employee of the same company. So these are all the experiences. And so I have the experience of building the first 300 to 400 people of Aspire Systems. And so I thought I'll share some of the anecdotes of that experience. So the other one is I'll give you some stories about, so when we were about 40, 50 people size, at that point in time, people would quit and join Infosys or Cognizant. We were a 30, 40 people company. Cognizant was a 2,000, 4,000, 10,000 people company. And we asked them, why? Why do you want to quit? I'm paying you enough. I'm paying you more. And I'm giving you a good position. Why do you want to quit? And at that point in time, all these people were kids with 4 or 5 years experience, right? 20 years they will join, 21 years they will join, 25 or 26. I'm sorry about that. 25 or 26, they will quit, and 4 or 5 years. Why? And we found that they quit because they thought in the marriage market, if they go and say, I work for Cognizant, people were willing to give them the bride or groom, but willing to marry. The parents were willing to marry, but they are working for one obscure Aspire Systems. Today, Aspire Systems has gained that foothold. Today, Aspire Systems is about 3,000 people strong, still not Cognizant, but at least people are willing to give a bride or groom based on Aspire Systems name at that point in time. So what did we do? Well, we started a PR exercise. We said, we are a great company, and that's the journey that we started in 2004, 2005. That gave us, in 2008, 2009, we got to get awarded as the best company to work for when we were only about 500 people size. Today, we are a 3,000 people sized company, and we are, last year, we were in the top 50 companies of best company to work for. It's small company, right? Not a huge 1 lakh people company. 3,000 people company is smaller. But when we were about 400, 500 people also, we got that award. So we started building profile around our company and all of this. These are some of the experiences. So, and I will get to the 3 frameworks that I talked about. So as I told you, co-founder or anything has to be 1 + 1 has to become more than 2. Number 1. Number 2, complementary skill sets. That needs to be there. Otherwise, why would it continue and sustain? And at some point in time, we found, why did we get a GPA 2.0? Because we found that even those complementary skill sets, since now we have the money, we can hire, and I talk about XYZ, I will talk about that, why it is better. If you can hire, why it is better to do it. And then rather than being a partner, and what are the advantages of in the XYZ, I'll talk to you about. So that is why we said, okay, no more we need to give 50-50 to each other, because your complementary skill set that you're bringing in, I can hire at a lower output of my equity. And that's what we tried in GBL 2.0 and all of that. So the continuing complementarity is a very important requirement, particularly in a co-founder team. You will make a lot of mistakes. The point that I wanted to make in pointing out some of the mistakes is no amount of these kind of mentoring sessions can prepare you. It can avoid some of the very known mistakes, but you will encounter mistakes. So don't be harsh on yourself. Keep trying. You should not give up. The first example I told you was not to give up on building a team. Just because you have a bad experience, you should not give up. You should continue to build. You should say that, okay, I have to experiment with people and I have to build. So those are some of the things. So let's come to BTY. Very, 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 very important. It's an extremely easy thing for me because I am no good. You have to hire people better than you. That is BTY. Better than you. Always hire people who are better than you. It's extremely easy for me because I am not very good at anything, be it computer science, software engineering. I built a software company. I did not know to write 1 line of code. I founded a solar company. I don't know what solar is about. I didn't know. I have no idea. We founded a heating company. Not that I have any experience in building heating systems. It's easy for me. We tried to do finance. I did not have any finance in background in finance. So I had to hire anybody on off the street I hire was even better than me. But for a lot of people like you who are very qualified, the biggest problem is if you are in a room in a day and you're spending more than 50% of your time in a room where in that room you are the best person, which means you're either spending time alone or you're spending time with people who are inferior to you, then you're doing a mistake. You're not going to grow. Only when you remove your importance of the task, that's when it is going to get more defined. When you try to delegate, when you try to give it away to someone, you are in a position to use your strength elsewhere. So always look for people who are better than you, other than the times when you are just scaling. If you are trying to be having a synergy where 1 plus 1 is more than 2, it has to be 10 or 20. The only way you can do it is to hire people who are better than you. Now, should they be better? So can I hire people who are better than me in finance and hire people who are better than me in sales? So what am I saying? I'm okay at sales, I'm okay at finance, but I will hire specialists who are better than me. That's one way of looking at it. So I am okay at certain things, but I am hiring better than me in a particular functional expertise. That is one way of looking at it. That's easier. Okay. But when will you actually become better? Look at successful companies. Let's take Microsoft as an example. Bill Gates. Is he holding the helm of the company right now? No. Who is holding the helm of the company right now? It's Sundar Pichai. Why? He has found that that person is better than him. Why? I am the owner. I know the company extremely well. Why should I hand it over to Sundar Pichai? I am Bill Gates. Why should I give it to Satya Nadella? Who is that guy? So they have found people better than them to even run the company from the helm of the company, holding the top of the company. And they may even retire. Why? Because at some point in time, I need to constantly evaluate whether I am the right person. Holding on to an ego and a position in a startup or a grown up is not the right thing at all. You should give it away to people who are better than you. And that's when you will grow also. That's a lot of employees also, I keep telling them, if you hold secret and say, I'm not going to give it away, otherwise I will lose my importance. That's a very common feeling of a lot of entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs find it very difficult to give away because they are very bright people. People like me, we are not very bright people, so we are okay. Because I don't know software programming, so I have to hire people better than me. Any programmer is better than me. But for a lot of people like you who are from a great background, it's extremely difficult to think that I can get the job given to someone better than me. It's a very, very difficult attitude to give up. So BTY is a very tough, it requires a lot of maturity for you to get there. But that is the way to go and hire a team. BTY is an extremely important aspect of hiring. Unless you're scaling, you already have figured out you're going to be having only in after you figure out the key secret sauce. Let's say you're in Swiggy and I'm going to hire only delivery guys. Then delivery guys should be better than me in delivery for sure. They should deliver better than me, but they need not do everything better than me. But I should have for each function people. So once it is figured out, it can be functionally better than me. Each function has to be better than me. But in the initial stage, in overall itself, people better than me is what we should succumb to. How do you manage it? How do you convince them to work for you while they are better than you? That's when the secret comes. Gauri is better than me in many, many aspects. The people that I work with, most of them are better than me in most aspects. And why should they give up what they are better at and work with me or work for me? That is something I'm not able to answer. Is it because you are providing vision? For some people, it is because you're providing vision. For some people, it is because they are not confident enough to come out and do some bold things that you're willing to do. It could be risk-taking ability, it could be vision, it could be the it could be an emotional feeling of I want to help this person. Sometimes I have had people who are much better than me who have looked at me and looked at it and said, "Oh my God, this guy is struggling so much. I want to go and help him." These are all very transactional things that I'm mentioning. It's very difficult to define why people who are better than you will come and work. But that's the thing that you should constantly think about. First of all, recognize that I am not going to be the best in my company. I'm going to hire people who are better than me. BTY. Number two is PCM. I told you I'll give you the three frameworks. PCM framework, which is many of you would have studied 12th, right? And I guess looking at this, many of you have done engineering. I don't know how many of you have not done engineering, but in engineering, this physics, chemistry, math is the important criteria for choosing who is going to be given a seat. I'm sure you have heard of it. Here, I want to mention about the order in which it is important. What is important? Many a times when we formed our team of that 40, 20, 20, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, we looked at math before the physics and chemistry, right? Now what happened? We only looked at the math. We did not look at, we looked at physics, which is, what is physics? Physics, we looked at one aspect of physics, which is their skill sets. But we did not look at where they are. Will they be in a position to come together and work in a place? That is the physics also. So physics, the first thing. Physics includes skill sets, location, ability to spend enough time on your venture. Will they be in a position to leave what they are doing and come and spend time on your venture? Are they physically available? Today, you can say that physical is trying to melt, but it's not very true. Even now, I am moving one of our companies, Aspiration Energy, in which Satya is involved. I am moving all of them into a single place. They are spread in 2-3 places right now because I think that the coffee table conversations, the pantry conversations are extremely important. So physics, it's not only skill sets and timing, it is also actual physics. Am I going to be able to pull them all together into a room? So physics is the first thing that includes skill sets as well. Do I need, do I have all the skill sets that I need for building this to the next stage? That is physics. The second is chemistry. Extremely important. Is it possible for me to make this team gel together? Are we going to be arguing most of our time? While I say complementary skill sets are needed, arguments are good, but in addition to arguments, you have to do work as well. It's not like you can spend time only in arguing. So chemistry is about, in spite of my not agreeing with you, I am agreeing to work together towards the cause. I think it may fail, but I'm willing to experiment along with you. Right. We are aligned in terms of what is the overall vision. That is chemistry. So in a last comes maths. So whenever we are looking at a hiring somebody, the first thing that comes is what is it going to cost me? Am I going to give 20% or 10% or 50% of my company? How much cash am I going to give? That is what comes. But basically, the first aspect is physics. As I told you, physics includes skill sets, timing, as well as actual physical location and ability for the team to be pulled together in a team. Second is chemistry. That it's in the order of this priority. First is physics, second is chemistry, and third comes math. Whether we are going to pay salary, how much shares are we going to give, all that comes third, the last. I am not saying one is less important than the other, but the order in which you evaluate a team member is PCM, not the other way around. Never take M to the top. First take physics, second take chemistry, and third is math. So I told you, I'll give you three things. One is, as I told you, BTY, better than you. Second is PCM, which is physics, chemistry, math. And the third is XYZ. And XYZ is a compensation structure. Now, in a founding team and in a startup, we all think that equity is the cheapest because I don't have cash, I'll give away equity. But that's a very silly mistake. That's not the right thing to do, and I'll explain that. Now, if you take many of your engineers, I suppose, if I take the risk in the x-axis and reward in the y-axis, right? What happens? When somebody is a salaried employee, that person does not depend on the success of the company. Whether the company is successful, company generates cash, the company gets orders, the company is able to be completing the product or not, that person's salary has to be paid. In a finance equivalent, it's equivalent to debt. Debt has to be paid, no matter whether you're performing well or not. The debt does not have any bearing. That's X. We call it as XYZ. This is not something that I have formed. I have learned PCM from someone. I have learned XYZ framework on someone else. I'm just giving it to you. And so X is a fixed income irrespective of the performance. Y is the incentive or the variable pay that has slightly more risk, which means I get some X, which is fixed salary, irrespective whether the company is performing or not. Y, if I am able to get so many orders, or if I am able to complete a particular task, I get paid. But I may not be able to, particularly in a startup scenario, I may not be in a position to complete it because it's uncertain, right? I get 10 orders. Will I be able to get it? I don't know till I get it. So Y is slightly more risky. In a finance standpoint, X or salary is the lowest in risk and the lowest in returns. And Z, which is the equity, which is equivalent to equity raise, share as funding from VCs or funding from angels, or giving away equity as co-founders or whatever, the risk is very high because the company may not succeed. The investor is taking a high risk because the company may not succeed. And the employee or the co-founder is taking a high risk because he's giving up, he or she is giving up their opportunity of working for a company and earning a salary, positions that can grow, and giving up and giving here. So risk is high and the reward is also has to be high. And that's why you give up to a little bit more of the success. Now it looks like it's easier to give Z in the first place. But once money is made, believe me and trust me, once money is made, it's extremely difficult to part away the money. Money, till it is made, it looks like, okay, you're ready to take the risk, I'll give you. Now, how do you divide X, Y, Z? And how do I marry that with physics, chemistry, math? And how do I still hire better than me? How do I marry all the three? That's where the balance comes. Now, how does it balance? For example, if I'm building a software company, right? Let's say I'm building an app company. It appears like the initial work is completely technical. So I need a software engineer. Now I should give away 30%, 50%, maybe 70% to the software engineer. Now, is that right? Let's think of it. After the application is built, for example, Google today. Now, Google's, let's say, Sundar Pichai today. Does he use his software skills to build the company further, or is it product management skills? Now it becomes very distinct. Like let's take Satya Nadella. Is he using his software skills, or is he using his product management and customer understanding and marketing and sales skills? Let's take any company that you're thinking about. Let's say Reliance Jio, just to take another example. Now, is the technical skill of building the towers and technology, if that person, the technology person who understands how to build a tower, how to build the technology, if that person holds 70% or 50%, do you think it's right for Jio now? So we should look at it from two angles. What is needed for the company today? Okay, now let's say I'm successful. And what will be the vision of the company at that point in time? And will I have sufficient equity for what I need to take that company from that stage after the product is built? I need sales and marketing. I need product development. I need to understand market and product fit. So by giving away 50% right now to the software guy, am I right in building the company further? No, it's extremely difficult, particularly when it is successful. Let's say you are a 50% owner of a company and that company is doing very well. And how, as I told you, that better than you is very difficult for us as founders. Do you think the co-founder will have any better than us in terms of doing better than you? that person is going to think that, oh, why should I leave away my position? I built this company. My ego is attached to it. I want to be the VP of the company. How can you bring somebody else and give that person to be the VP marketing? I think I am good at marketing. I will do it. And that may not work, right? So the ability to take the movement on the team and ability to adjust comes out of the equity, the Z portion. And so you should be very careful about parting the Y portion. You should be doing more of X, but you may not have cash. It's a very delicate balance. I don't have cash, but everybody is advising me that I should do X. But how do I pay? So I give equity. But then you should have an envision vision of what it will be after my product is built, what skills are needed for me to take it to the next stage. So as I told you, first I told you some of the failure experiences where we did not know that I have to hire better than me. I did not know that physics, chemistry, math, physics is very, very important. I did not know that I have to compensate some of them with X rather than Y and Z. So I gave a lot of Z. And the 10% that I talked to you about, I gave you only one example. I have several examples for it. So these are the three framework that you should remember when you're trying to hire any team member. It doesn't matter co-founder or any team member. Better than you, as I told you, PCM. Number 3 is XYZ. Z should be very long-term oriented. X is short-term. That's all I wanted to mention, and I'll be open for questions. I hope everybody heard what I said clearly. Satya, did you hear everything clearly?
Hey, Boo. Yeah, we heard everything
can
clearly. Nandini is up here, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anybody has any questions for me?
I think Satya is having some network issues, Boo.
Okay, no problems.
I think we'll wait for him to start the moderation of session.
Yeah, I think guys, any questions? I just got back. I had some mute issues, but the floor is open for questions. If you are not able to talk, you can type in the chat window where I can read it.
Somebody has written too much informative. I don't know if it's a positive comment or a negative comment, but
Positive, sir. Anyway,
okay.
I think one of the biggest thing I learned from Bhu working with him for many years is how do you really look at team members, because our first instinct in hiring and getting team members is actually completely wrong. So many of you, in fact, many of you in Nirman have precisely had the same problem. How do I convince to get a team member? So I think it would be a good point now if you have any questions to post, any specific comments or questions. So, Bull, there is a question in the chat window.
Okay. How to resolve conflicts or disagreements when it comes between co-founders and between co-founders and between co-founders and team. Okay. Okay.
So basically between co-founders and between co-founders and the team member who are not part of the co-founders.
Superb. Conflict resolution is an extremely involved subject. So I cannot answer it in one way, one minute, but I strongly recommend there is a course in Coursera from Northwestern University, which is my alma mater. I did an MBA from Kellogg School of Management from Northwestern. You can audit that course. You don't have to pay for it. So Coursera has a complete team building and conflict resolution course fully. I mean, you can audit it for free in Coursera. So I recommend you to strongly go through it. The the biggest thing is to take the issues beyond people. Not easy. Even now, I'm not good at it. But we try to take on the conflict in terms of the issue at hand and how does it affect all of us as a team, recognizing how it affects rather than take it into a personal. This is a very, very easy thing to say. Extremely, we are all human beings, right? At the end of the day, even today, I mean, Nandini will tell you if you ask her, she will say that I have taken, individuals not talking about issues. I think it's not true. I try to take issues above people. That's the biggest thing that you can do. First, take the conflict as an issue on what needs to be happening and what is the expectation and how does it affect the work that is involved rather than as a fight between individuals. That is the biggest thing that I will say as the most important aspect of it. But there are so many other aspects of conflict resolution. I strongly recommend you to go to Coursera course in Northwestern about building teams in conflict resolution.
Boo,
The
I
way
have
people,
a question. Boo,
okay, tell me
Nandini
now.
here.
Ah,
I have a question. See, for you, I would say both you and Gauri, I don't know, both of you might have been lucky to have found out each other in the college. But
hmm.
in Nirvan, if you see, like many students, they are not able to find out the correct partner. Okay, so do you have any heads up for it?
So
How to start about,
So Nandini, so I'm just going to give you a couple of stories of how this works. So I did my MBA in 2009, and again she said we'll have to do a solar or a solar. Now it has become a thermal heating company. When I came back from the US and tried to start this company called Aspiration Energy, I did not know anything about solar and I much less about heating. My idea was to do solar refrigeration. What did I do? I did not. I was not studying in college, and my co-founder was not coming from college then. So what I did was an organic search. I went to colleges or institutions that are doing research on this. I went and met with entrepreneurs across the world. I actually went and met with people in New Jersey, in Italy, in Israel, and all of those places where people are founding similar companies that I could afford it at that time. Not everybody, but today with telephone, it's possible to reach out. And that's when I found, I'll not call him as a co-founder, but to a large extent he is. I found somebody called Manoharan. So when you are meeting with many people, it's not going to happen in one shot. I probably have met and talked with about 70 people before I found somebody called Manoharan who came and built our company as a solar heating company. So I did not know anything about solar heating, but I knew that I'm going to do something in solar refrigeration. So I approached so many people who are doing research. I asked them for research assistant. I spoke to people who are doing research in solar heating and asked them for their research assistant. And I asked the research assistant to say, are you willing to join with me and go? 70 people or 80 people I would have gone through before I found somebody called Manohar. And this is one story. So it's not going to be possible to find within your circle. So you have to go beyond the circle and keep looking. But you have to be careful about better than you, XYZ. As I told you, that all holds, right? You have to be doing better than you, PCM, XYZ. You find somebody in Finland, the guy is willing to work but we are not going to be in a position to meet each other because his time zone is different, my time zone is different. He's going to show me something, I cannot see it. Oh, it's a waste. So physics, chemistry, math matters. But cast the net wide. You cannot, that's the main job. The main job is to build a team. If you build a team that's better than you, that's the main job. And put them together and make the team work together, that's the main job. So you should not think twice about spending a lot of time in building the team. I would say, as founders, anywhere from 40 to 50% of your time should be in building the team. That's not a bad thing at all. That's not going to hurt you. That much I can clearly say.
Okay. So we have another question, Boo, from Amit Kumar in the text
Yeah.
section. So he says many times investors. Yeah,
Yeah. Will you read it or should I read it?
I will read it.
Yeah.
Many times investors prefer to have equity in startup, but they may not give their input in business. Is this scenario possible? If yes, what is the right way to deal with this?
See, uh, it's like this, right? Just because this is the most important, this happens with kids, this happens with wife, this happens with friends, it happens with any two people. Any two people interact with each other. I have one priority, the other person has a priority. They are not going to be aligned, right? At every point in time. It's going to be take a lot of effort to align. Particularly if some of you are married, you will know. Husband and wife, it's extremely difficult to align because the interests are different, personalities are different. And that is the beauty of the marriage, I would say. Initial years, you fight a lot. Why? Because you think that you can change the other person. That is, there is a underlying assumption that I can change by fighting, and that's why fight happens. So where does it go? You anyway give up, saying I can't change. Either change happens in some cases, very rarely, but otherwise you give up. So that's the same thing that happens with the investors. Just because it's a startup of mine, and that when I wake up, this is the most important thing for me. My co-founder need not have the same. My investor need not have the same importance. But does that mean that you can never get it? No. Have you tried enough? And how critical is that? If it is very critical, you should be trying enough. You should be having many astras to throw. The biggest astra that I have seen that works is this. When you ask somebody, this is a very small, very low level tip I'm going to give you. When you ask somebody for a time, right? If you go and ask an open-ended question that says, will you be able to help me on this topic? Now, what are you, look at it as a recipient. What happens? I have to make a determination whether I am qualified to do it. I think I am, but I'm not that sure. Then that answer, I'm not answering. Then can you spend 1 hour on it? I probably say, yes, I want to spend 1 hour on it. But what do I respond? The better option is for you to say, will you be available for a call of 20 minutes, specify a time and the duration, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour at on Tuesday at 11 o'clock or Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Now what happens as a recipient? I need to first decide whether I'm available on Tuesday and Wednesday or not. This question shifts to, am I available at that time? Rather than, do I know about it? Rather than, do I want to spend 1 hour on it? Now the question shifts to, am I available at that time? That is easier answer. 1 mark question. 1 mark questions, 3 mark questions, and essay questions. If you take the essay question and ask, it's very difficult. If you take a 1 mark question and ask yes or no questions or objective questions, very easy. So make it into an objective question and interact during the time and share an agenda before, share materials before, then a conversation will happen. It's a very small tip. Hope it's useful for you.
I think that's one of the most common problems. Other as an inherent.
Yes, like this meeting, when Nandini asked, will you be available for an hour on Sunday? I said, anytime. She didn't even tell me whether it is 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock, because I said anytime is fine. That became a 1 mark question. What can you talk about? Very difficult question to answer. I didn't even know. He asked me. It was a very open question. Let's say question. But then
I gave
she suggested a couple of topics. She said, "Can you talk about this? Can you talk about that?" I said, "I can talk about that. That's okay. 1 hour, I can talk about that." Because distill that into a objective question rather than an essay question. Then you get a lot of more inputs.
Boo, I have a quick question on behalf of maybe the students. This is Mahesh here.
Hi, Mahesh.
Hey, so question related to, is it when is a good time to take equity, to take VC money or even angel money? You made a good point that your first option should be to raise debt and pay salaries if needed. The X and Y are the easy things to do, and you should focus as much as possible on X and Y. And so, when is a good time to raise equity investment? Or is it actually best if you can build a company with no equity investment at all? Like I know companies that have been completely bootstrapped, and they're doing very well. So
Right.
I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Superb. So there are from a maturity and change of behavior of the user standpoint, I would take that as a how much change do the end user have to take to use what I'm offering. That's what I would put as a framework for this. I mean, I'm oversimplifying, but just to give you a simple framework, because that's all time we have. A simpler framework will be I have to see how critical is it for the users that I'm taking and how much change they have to do from where they are to where they will be. So I'll take an example of a big basket or an Ola. Now I am used to going to the shop, looking at the goods and buying. Now I have to look at some photographs, place order on it, somebody has to come and deliver it. Now it's a big behavioral change for me. Now, if it's a big behavioral change, getting a lot of customers, now you may be lucky to get a lot of customers to adapt. Like, for example, COVID is a big behavioral change, sitting inside and doing on Teams and all of that. But there was an external Armageddon that made it happen. So, if you're lucky to have some kind of an external Armageddon that makes it happen for you, then you don't have to take VC money at all. The ideal is to get customer money. Finally, the value is going to be built by having the customer pay for the services or goods that you're offering. Finally, money for the VC is also going to come from the transaction between company and the customer. The customer is going to pay for everything, everybody. Customers are only people who are going to pay for the employees. Customer is going to pay for the company. Customer is going to pay for the VC. But when do I bring equity? Now, why do I bring equity? If I have uncertainty, a lot more uncertainty in getting the customers to pay for it, like in case of Big Basket, or like in case of Ola, or like in case of OU, or like in case of Airbnb, I need to bring in VC upfront, loads and loads of it. If I am closer, the solution that I'm offering is small change for the end customer, and end customer will immediately transact. The ideal is to convert that customer and show that and take money rather than take the money and show it. I hope you understand what I'm saying. If the finally the money has to be made between the transaction between the customer and the company, product or service offered by the company. Finally, that has to be profitable. That is why VCs are putting money in Ola. That's why VCs are putting money in Flipkart, thinking that okay, finally the customer will pay for the services of Flipkart. If that behavioral change is long, I need to put loads and loads of money to get more and more customers transformed. But if that gap is smaller, the behavioral change gap is smaller, then we should not raise VC, but you should convert customers. Ideal money is from the customer. Raise money from the customer in terms of revenue.
Great, thanks. Thank you very much. That's perfect.
Do we have a couple of more questions in the message window? Shall I read it?
Yeah, you can, please.
So Aditya has the question asking, have seen nowadays in most of the startups, people are opting for co-founder instead of founder. Is there any specific reason for that? That's one question.
Right. Very simple. Any company, just take an imaginary, any company, it doesn't matter. Take Ola, for example. I'm just taking a popular name. Now, Ola will need somebody who does sign up for new drivers, or fleet management or the drivers team management. That is something somebody is needing. Somebody needs to advertise, make sure that that reaches to the end customers, and somebody is needed to head the customer service. The company customers who are coming and taking the Ola are serviced well, their service is offered, rendered well. Somebody needs to develop the app, working with Google Maps or whatever that is needed for the app. Somebody needs to be managing the finances. What happens with the entire thing? Is the cost okay? Is the price okay? Somebody needs to design the prices. Now, if somebody imagines that that person is good at all of these, then founder is good. But unfortunately, for building value, you need people better than you. And many a times, in an Indian scenario, people are more oriented towards X than Z. But it's changing. And people want X and Y and Z. I will not compromise. I am earning 20 lakhs a year. I will come and work for you. You give me 20 lakhs a year. And if I produce success for me, for you, you give me 10 lakhs bonus. Plus you give me 25% of the equity. So people want X and Y and Z. Now, what to do? That's the way world works. But then you have to say, if I'm giving you Z, I will have to cut down on X for you. If I'm giving you Y, I'll have to cut down on X for you. That's the way you should handle it. So co-founders are preferred because they have stake. If I'm an investor, I would not prefer a founder, because if that one person goes away, where is my money going away? So it's very difficult for me to fund a company that has only one person. That's extremely difficult for me. You imagine you are going and investing in a company, unless the other person is Anil Ambani or Mukesh Ambani. Even then, you will want to know what is the team that is built. If you are investing, you want to know a well-rounded team. Ideally, from our perspective, we want employees. From an investor perspective, they like co-founders because each of them have a stake in it. But then stake has many meanings. Stake does not mean only returns. What do they lose if the company does not do well? That is the more important stake. When an investor looks at it, I will look at it and say, let's say the company fails. So I have worked with a bunch of PhD students recently in one of the startups in IIT in Nirman. And what I found was, if the company fails, what happens to them? They are not putting their personal money. What happens to them? They are PhDs. They will find a job. I found that the risk is not matching. They will. So many. That is a very important aspect. What do the person lose if the company fails? Now that is a very important criteria. What do they gain if it becomes successful? Is there, but more important is this. So those are the aspects that investors look at when we look at a team. So that's why we prefer a founding team than a founder. I hope that explains what you're asking.
Another question by Dhairyashil. So it says,
Yeah.
it says boil the dish. So what according to you should be the number of people in a founding team? Can there be a single founder and other complementary people as a core team?
If
For example, Dhairyashil had 17, more than 25 people in his team. So
okay,
that's
fantastic.
all that I have to ask questions.
Fantastic. So this is again, individuals have different preferences. As I will say, same thing with VC. I will say, if the customer, finally a company is making money out of customer paying for, not investor investing at higher valuations and all that. Finally, any company has to get its money from the profits earned by servicing or giving product to the customer. The customer pays, I make money. That is the real money. That is the real money. Everything else, what Big Basket is doing by selling shares and all of that, is unreal money. It's not real money, and that's all chasing that it will come later. Now, if you're closer to real money and you can change it to getting customer pay for your services or products at the earliest point, you are better off being a founder and getting a core team as employees. If it is far and it's a lot of uncertainty, you are better off giving equity and get co-founders. The only thing that I will say is, don't look at the short-term vision of I need to build a product now, so I'm give away 50% to a software engineer. That is not what you should look at. After I build the product, what happens? What are the skills that I need? Do I have equity for it? So you should look one level or two levels, like a chess. In chess, what do? The immediate move, but you look ahead and say, what if he does this, he does that, and what am I going to react to it? So just 2 or 3, the successful chess players are people who predict what are the various alternatives for 3 or 4 moves. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that you should not have co-founders.
Yeah, I can hear you. My previous meeting is still running late, so I'll go on mute, but you guys continue.
I hope that answers your question. Basically, as close you are to getting money earned from customers. Whenever we invest in companies also, we push them to go to the customers and earn money out of customers. That's what we say. Don't worry about, getting VC money, getting higher valuation. It's all okay, fine. If you're finding the customers who are paying for it, VCs will automatically come. They will chase you. But if you're not going to be, customer friendly, and you're not going to be able to make money out of customers, who will want to invest on you? Then you have to do all your fad things. Why do you want to get into that?
Boo, I have a couple of more questions now. So Bhashwar wants to know how I weigh each attribute in case where my co-founders does not qualify all of the attributes in the physics.
Say it again. I didn't hear it.
Talking about physics, how do I weigh each attribute in case where my co-founders does not qualify all of the attributes in the physics?
You have to determine what physics you need for building the company from this stage to next stage, and what physics I need for building it from the next move, as I told you in chess. And if you do not have, you have to find other people or replace. Don't think twice about replacing. I have a problem with this. Personally, it's very difficult for me to get away from a venture. It's extremely difficult for me to get away from people. I am attached to people. That has stood many a times as a disadvantage for me. I am not very easy to fire somebody. Not easy for me. But I know that I'm not saying that the other extreme of, I'm not even people oriented. You will not get the good people also. So there should be a fine balance between the two. That physics has to be constantly evaluated, and you have to churn. People who are successful are very good at the chemistry, they're very good at math, but physically they churn. You need to churn. I am not good at it, very bad at it, but many people are.
Okay, so now we have one question. So let us have this as the last question
Yeah,
for this.
we are already 4 minutes beyond the time. Yeah.
Yes. So this question is from Satvik. So he wants to know, how do we ensure a Facebook or Twitter scenario doesn't happen where the co-founder sets up his or her own shop? We may know only a few people who we trust, but they may not have the required skills. How do we take care of the trust issue in the beginning if we go with relatively unknown people?
Okay. Yeah. It's a very beautiful question. Very, very good question. Now, again, so 2 things I will say. 1, is your market expanding pie market or share of the pie market? What does that mean? A cell phone here in India, or cell phone connections in India, is it growing? Is it new adaptations that is growing every year 100%? It was, not anymore. Now, if I have to get customers, I have to pluck customer away from my competitor. That is a share of pie market. 10 years back or 15 years back, cell phones in India was growing pie market. Observe it. In the growing pie market, where the new customers have to be recruited, changing away from what they were doing earlier to a new paradigm, and it's growing extremely fast. How many players were there? 20 players were there. Aircel, Reliance itself had, Jio was not there, Reliance was there, Tata Teleservices, some Airtel, then Vodafone. So many players, Idea, so many players, 20 players were there. So when the market is growing pie, you are better off having competitors. Don't worry about the secret or trust. Let them go and start. You should have a great team to compete. So the trust issue, you should be very careful about distinguishing that competition is good or bad. In a growing pie scenario, competition is extremely good. In fact, in our company, in Aspiration Energy, last few weeks, not only few weeks, few months, few years, we have discussed about introducing a competitor. We go and introduce a competitor to our customer because it's a growing pie. I talked with the company again and connected with IIT, which is into energy monitoring. I'm telling them, if you only go and talk to the customer and the competitors are not present, look at it from the customer's perspective. It's a change of behavior, big change. And one company is coming and saying they can solve. How do I trust that my problem can be solved? If another person talks similar approach, not the same approach, then I get a suspicion that if three companies are coming and are talking to me and they talk about similar solution to my problem, then I have a bigger confidence that it can be solved. So being unique and only one is not always great, particularly for the growing pie market. So this is the framework that I'll give you in terms of determining whether you should worry about the trust or not. Having said that, you cannot help it at all. If you have to scale, you have to trust people. You may be unlucky. In my life, I have found myself to be extremely lucky to find, and I think I mean, for example, I'll give you an example of airport. 100% of the people in the airport are checked whether they are terrorists or not. We are spending 1 hour to be checked whether they are terrorists or not. They go 1 hour in advance because we want to avoid the terrorism. People are not allowed inside, all of that. What is the actual probability of finding a terrorist in terms of number of passengers that are traveling in the airport? 1 in a million? Not even that. 1 in 10 million? Now what happens? Actual bad people who are non-trustworthy are 1 in minimally 100. It's not more than 100 for sure. But by having the benefit of doubt life, you're going to find 999 people out of 1,000 who are trustworthy for you. If you approach life with the other side, which is burden of proof, let them prove that they are trustworthy, then only I will trust. You're going to be missing the 999 people because you want to avoid that 1% out of 1,000. This will be my strong thing. If that 1% out of 1,000 comes to you early on, you're screwed. What to do? You have to take the chance. I found that one person who cheated me in the 400th or 500th person, and so the first 400 contributed. Maybe I'm lucky. If that 1% probability happens to you upfront, or 0.1% probability happens to you upfront, that's your fate. What can anybody do? But you should trust. I will say you should do benefit of doubt rather than burden of proof. Generally, an approach scaled entrepreneurs work with is what is called, it can be another session on what is benefit of doubt versus burden of proof, but benefit of doubt is a better option rather than burden of proof option. Generally, even in life, I will say the world is a good place. World has extremely good people, trust people. It has worked for me. It has many successful people that I know have trust on people. They trust first, they doubt later. Doubt has to be proved beyond doubt. I need to be having doubt if and only if I am beyond doubt. I will never doubt somebody without, I mean, first approach of life is not burden of proof that he is trustworthy or she is trustworthy. First equation of life is I give a benefit of doubt. This is a very strong thing that I hold very close to my heart. Many people will advise you otherwise. The whole world is chiding me, saying I should not be trusting. The whole world tells me that I should not be trusting. Every week, I encounter my advisors coming and telling me that I should not be trusting this person, I should not be trusting that person, you're trusting too much on this person. People are bombarding me with it, but I put a big shield on myself and say, forget about it. It's okay. I will trust. What will you do? I will not doubt. I will trust.
I think we've come to the end of the session. Thanks a lot, Boo. I think it was a very wonderful session. We could really see from the number of comments and discussions. As always, we really appreciate your time and effort. And I just want to add one point here, Mahesh, to your question. Boo's company Aspire Systems has recently reached the 800 crore mark, and it's a company that has not taken any VC money. So it's you can say entirely bootstrapped. So that philosophy or advice that he gave right now is not just advice, but that's something that he really works with. So with that, thank you for your time, and really wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. All the best to everyone.
Thanks a lot, Boo.
Okay.
Bye.